Welcome to Check In to Check Out, the e-commerce growth podcast for mobile first. My name is Justin Ehrenstein, and alongside me is my co-host, Connor Burke. Welcome to Check In to Check Out. Today we have Dan Pearce, CEO at Sovereign Naturals, and we're really going to get into Amazon today. I'm really excited because it's actually a world that I haven't played in that much, besides maybe hooking up some pipes. So, Dan, you're CEO. What do you do every day? What's your day look like?
That certainly depends on the day. Ideally, I'm keeping our leadership team and our organization focused on our strategic path. I believe people want to do a good job. So if we put them in a position to do so, we're usually going to be pretty excited by the results. So on a good day, that's what I'm doing, making sure people have the clarity, the fit, the belief to execute extraordinarily well. And that's interesting in these days because I'm in a natural products company. We sell dietary supplements, and what a good job has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. As I mentioned before, Amazon started selling supplements 15, 18 years ago. Until then, it wasn't an option. They were selling books and lots of other things before they got to our market. And now that they've gotten there, we're even seeing changes there. I'm looking over here on my whiteboard, and my breakdown of sales when I came on board and kind of took all of our sales and wrote them down. When I asked my team where they thought our sales came from, we were disconnected on that. We're a company that grew up through what they call mom and pop health food stores, and they're incredibly important to us. There's only so many of them. So more of my business is digital right now than it is in those stores, and creating an even playing field for them is critically important, and making sure our consumers served. So I think as CEO, a lot of the job is representing our ultimate, our customers and our consumers, and making sure people are doing everything they can to make a great experience for them.
So one thing you said in there, which I really want to get into, is you said the job has changed dramatically in the past 3 to 4 years. And what about it? Why has it changed from your perspective? Because I see it every day, but everyone's answer is a little different.
I'm going to go back a little bit further than 3 or 4 years. I work in business. I have a history degree, so sometimes I like to go way back on stuff. And I think for the history of mankind, anyone who wanted to be a trader or be in commerce was solving for distribution. The farmer needed to take his product to market to find people who wanted to buy his hay, his eggs, his food, whatever, his sugar, his dried meat. Then we expanded to new markets, the Silk Road, British East Indian Trading Company, all those different things. And I would argue that until about 20 years ago, that was always the solve. What we were solving for in the consumer goods framework was distribution. Walmart just opened more stores. That was the strategy. We're going to open more stores. We're going to solve for distribution. Brands try to get into as many stores. And then this juggernaut named Amazon came off, from the world's largest flea market, and solved distribution. I can get almost anything I want within a day, which is pretty darn cool. I split time between both coasts of Florida. My wife called me last night and said, "Hey, I'm out of this and this, but I'm coming to see you tomorrow." And those products are waiting for her because she doesn't like to order our supplements. I order the supplements, and they arrived at my inbox this morning at 7 a.m. I caught them coming back from my workout. Distribution's not a problem anymore. So for a lot of brands, Amazon over the last 10, 15 years solved distribution for them, and they grew because anyone who was interested in their product could then purchase their product. It was absolutely growth, but it wasn't growing demand. Now that that's saturated, and you see it in search traffic, whether it's on Google or Amazon, now you have to start solving for creating distribution. And the brands that understand that are skyrocketing. The Mary Ruths, the Bloom Nutritions, the Ollie, Goli Nutrition, those people are skyrocketing because they understand their job is to create demand. The people who are just waiting for the next distribution network are struggling. And then the next piece is, it's great that Amazon does that, but Amazon at its core is still just another retailer. And what I mean by that is they own the customer. They want to control that relationship, and they're going to squeeze as much margin out of it as possible. And, Andy Jassy, don't get mad at me. That's not a complaint. That's what every retailer does. Right? Is we want to control the customer. We want them coming into our store because that's our leverage point. That's what we exist to do. After a certain point, if you truly want to engage with your consumers, you need to do that directly. You need to have a direct relationship with them. Amazon seller almost gives you some of that. D2C can give you more of that. Engaging on social media can give you more of that. So we're now seeing, again, we're not just solving for, even when people first started solving with Amazon, they were still solving for distribution, they were solving for POs. Now we're starting to think about, how do we solve for consumers? How does a consumer have a seat in the room? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you were in a room on, at least in my industry, natural products, your customer was the store. Amazon was a store. Walgreens was a store. Bob's Bait and Vitamins was a store. That's my made up supplement store name, so I don't have to call people out. Any of those cases, now we have to start thinking about the consumer being at the table, taking it a step further, and how we relate with them and how we build value for them. Because if we don't, they will go on somewhere else. And so I think we're very much solving for something different. And and the mindset that gets you good on Amazon is not the mindset that helps you build a great D2C business. It's not that mindset's not the same mindset that helps you engage with people on social or on TikTok. So the way we're structuring teams is different. The way we're thinking about and measuring is different. I obsess over search volumes. That wasn't on
Mm,
my radar 5 years ago. But if people aren't looking for me, I'm not growing my business. So
totally. So I think I completely agree with you. Demand creation is so important right now. And we see that with how teams are spending their time, such as in advertising and all that. But how does that change how you and your team spend your time, where you guys are focusing? So obviously Amazon's a channel that you guys are really focused on for distribution, but where are you focusing to create demand?
yeah, and I think I'm going to say something. I'm going to preface something before I say it. I think the first thing we have to do in understanding that is that demand goes where demand wants to go.
Hmm.
Well, 10 years ago, when I was working with brands, we were talking about this channel versus that channel. Omni-channel means I want to buy what I want, where I want, when I want. So
Hmm.
ultimately, the whole team is there together. And it's not, I was speaking with another senior person in my office yesterday, like, oh, well, pros up or pros down, our professional division. No, it's all us. Consumers are going to get what they want. And recognizing that becomes the first part of it. Now, where I'm
Hmm.
spending a significant amount of time is doing what I call telling our story at scale. So that's working with TikTok affiliates and making sure they represent us well and that we're building an army of people who want to tell our story. That's being on Meta and both paid and organic and multiple accounts telling our story from different lenses. My owner's more aggressive in some of the ways he supports the natural products industry, and I'm more moderate. We have a great backing in science. We have $1 million electron microscope on campus to make sure our product meets our standards, and a PhD on staff that does nothing else than research. Well, those are all great things, but it's only great if people know about it. Well, that's not true. It's
Hmm.
great regardless. It's much greater if people know. Um, yeah. So again, walking through, making sure people are thinking all the time about, is this a story that we can share? Is a major shift. And I'll give you a very pragmatic answer, but it's still accurate. We essentially sell what's called a colloidal silver or copper, which is going through the process. It's a very fine nanoparticle suspension of these ingredients in ultra pure water. Now you can make it in your
Hmm.
house, you can make it in your bathtub. That's the stuff that can turn you blue. It's got these challenges to it. What we do is very, very high level medical grade. We make our own water. We purify our own water. We have a water purification system. And we found for a long time that even though we were purifying the water and buying medical grade bottles, we were taking an extra step in washing them. And if you run manufacturing, you run lean manufacturing, you constantly validate your processes. And one day our regulatory team came in, all right, said, oh, we're not sure we should be washing the bottles anymore. Great, let's investigate it and tell people what we came out with. Like, well, we could look dumb. Not sure I agree. Yeah, we spent a lot of time doing this because at the time it was the best process. And if it's no longer the best process, we'll walk away from that investment. It's the right thing to do. And that in itself is a story that tells you something about us. And if we validate that we did it, well, great. Then we just validated that we did because we kept on questioning ourselves. Either way, it's something we need to be sharing with people. So getting our team to understand, it's not just getting Bob, Mary Jane, someone else on TikTok saying, look at my product. It's not just running DSP and STV on Amazon. It's not just running great flows in Klaviyo, but it's also blogging, sharing employee stories, interviewing people. For as many stores as our product sold in, we're sold in that many doctors' offices. Making an effort to have the team tell the stories of our doctors. So we're setting up an interview series of, hey, look, not how do you use sovereign silver in your clinical practice? But tell us about your practice. That makes our world bigger. That creates an opportunity to create demand down the line. So it's not always the linear performance marketing. I think when I came on board, everyone thought performance marketing. I'm like, yeah, we'll buy transactions, but we can't buy transactions where there isn't demand. It's
Yeah.
very, very inefficient pretty quickly to do that. So
I love that. Love that. And I think a lot of brands miss that.
yeah, it's because we were buying into it, and we were buying to capacity. Now we get there, and I think when I was on the agency side, I used to always think about brands would come in and say, "I want to target all my competitors." It sounds great, right? And I was sitting there one day, and I was watching. I was doing it for a customer, and they were willing to invest in it, and that was great. And it did not feel great, but I'm like, okay, we'll do it, but we're going to validate it. We're going to test how this goes. In the first week, my performance marketing team's like, yeah, we don't like these results. Like our numbers are not looking good. And I was driving to dinner with my wife, and we were going to a specific place. We were going to the Peruvian place by our house, and we passed a great steak place, and we passed a great Chinese place, and we passed a great Italian place, and we didn't go there because we wanted to go to the Peruvian place. Now, if there wasn't a table for us, we would have come back and gone to one of the other places. And I started realizing, like, that's kind of like targeting my competitors. If I'm on Amazon and I type in, I want to buy ABC vitamin, I wanted to buy ABC vitamin.
Mhm.
And just because we believe our products are better, I believe my products are better than my competitors. The consumer was looking for something specific, and we don't get to overwhelm that with our desire. So I think, you asked again, I gave a meandering answer. I apologize, but about what we think about, what I'm constantly obsessing about with my team is what's the next best dollar spent.
Yeah.
Are we maximizing Amazon capacity? Great. Let's start shifting those dollars. Where do we shift those dollars to? And it may be a blog, it may be an interview. The great thing about digital is we get to make those shifts a lot faster.
Yeah.
In brick and mortar, I set an annual merchandising plan, and they'll always let me spend more, but they probably won't let me spend different or less if I want to reallocate dollars. On digital, the world we live in, we change budgets daily, right? I mean,
Like,
you're doing bid adjustments in real time, right? We're doing these different
yeah.
things, and that's the getting the teams that have come up through traditional consumer goods or through working just in brick and mortar retail to understand that, yeah, I know that's what the budget was, but if you're telling me this is working, we'll just reallocate. And people from the digital world don't mind that because the Amazon guy also knows if I'm driving more demand, they get more demand to capture. There's a good chance they're going to capture it because I can't determine where they're going to get it. So I think that big shift is that conversation about what's the next best dollar? What are we doing out of it? How are we measuring it and making sure we're capturing it? So overall search traffic, overall intent, social media, we call it brand momentum. We're trying to build an internal index right now against it to say, look, this is, are more people looking for our product and engaging with our product than they were before. And as you guys know, that's across multiple platforms, multiple media, and it changes every day.
Yeah, I mean, you're an expert in the world of demand and distribution, but specifically, you're also familiar in your own product. There are a variety of reasons why people would pick your product, either on the professional side or on the consumer side, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a science-based issue, whether it's a results desired, and building your brand requires that story, which is harder from an NPR standpoint or NPS standpoint. So talk to us. I mean, you've been there only like 4 months. Sounds like you've been there for like 10 years. It's amazing. Um, so how, it seems like you're on a rapid quest, which is fabulous, to galvanize the team, to identify the markers. So talk to us, like, how's the momentum happening with the team? Are they reacting really well? And like, what are you seeing as far as a changing culture and stimulation?
Yeah, I think, in terms of the team perspective, I was lucky. And again, I try to go places where the company has a great story that's authentic, that's real. We don't have to make it up. And when there's a good team in place, it makes my life a lot easier. So I've got a great team, more traditionally focused, but very eager to look other places. And we've done a number of things. One of which is we've augmented with contractors. So people I'd worked with in the past who can come in and maybe they don't want to be here full time. And I think there's an advantage to that in a lot of cases. If you're focused on a brand, your world gets pretty myopic. If you're working across 10 brands, you see a ton of things. When I was at NetRush and we had the MarTech business, the retail business, it was across hundreds of brands. Our conversations on Friday about what we saw in the marketplace were pretty darn interesting most days. I mean, you're going to see a lot of things going on, and different people across different categories doing different things. And I've tried to maintain that. I try to call someone in digital every day and just touch base with what you're seeing, right? What are you seeing? And maybe it's not what I'm seeing and vice versa. And so I love having people from the outside come and do that. And again, then you can be very specific about subject matter. So the guy who creates our content around science is different than the person who's working with our Instagram influencers, is different than the person who's working with our TikTok affiliates. So we've augmented the team that way. And then I think it's, again, getting people to be comfortable with measuring and adjusting and measuring and adjusting as opposed to scripting. This is the way it's going to work. It's not going to work that well. And you had mentioned in dietary supplements, you're right. We can't say a lot about our products. I can't say it works. I'm barred from that, which is why I talk so much about scale. So what I'm solving for is a little bit different. The first thing I have to solve for is making sure customers believe my product is safe. So I'm willing to share stories about my safety. I'm willing to talk about bottle washing and medically purified water and things because it indicates safety. I'm willing to show that I have 45,000 4.7-star Amazon reviews. It's safe. My team's like, oh, well, maybe they didn't buy an Amazon. No, that's just a measurement of safety for me. So we always talk in terms of safety and efficacy being our markers, and making sure that, we call it ruling your health. People need to make choices about their health. And every story we tell has to hit one of those three lenses, which means we were just at a trade show. We had a videographer in our booth, and we were asking people simply, how do you control what do you do to rule your health? What choices do you make? And if they wanted to talk about their product company, we didn't care because we're celebrating that choice. The more people that choose to take control of their health, the better off we'll be. And I think that's where Justin, as we were kicking off, I was thinking about this so well. When I came on board, my team would talk a lot about traditional CMO or traditional brand management, which is important and it's a very critical skill. And they're like, well, you come from performance marketing. I'm like, yes. And then there's that realm in between, which is how do we split both? How do we stay on story? It's not just, yes, there was a nice short stretch of time where you could simply go out there and buy transactions because the demand existed and we hadn't solved for it with distribution. We're well past that.
I came up in that era
Yeah.
of where you could just put something on Google Shopping and you'd win. Like as long it was easy. And I think that era is done. And I think the adjustment of demand generation, especially with the new Facebook algorithm bidding structure, I think it's increased even more in the past 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely.
And creating that demand is so important, TikTok, et cetera. So do you care what channel a customer buys from?
I often refer to myself as being channel agnostic.
Okay.
I believe at my core, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, that I'm in the business of improving people's lives. I mean, I know, Jim Collins will say every business does that. Fair enough. But I believe it to my core. I have my reasons for that. I've seen people affected by my products. And that means I believe in a fair playing field. I don't try to distill it from one person to the other. I love great retail. I mean, I love walking to a great store. I love going to a great website. I love going to a great online experience. But I think that consumers should buy the product where it's best for them. I'm not trying to. I think we were at a trade show a couple of years ago, and the CEO of Adidas, who was trying to figure out their D2C business, is like, we don't own customers, we earn them. And that always stuck with me because I think sometimes we talk about our consumer as someone that we can steer, that we want to direct. And as a consumer, that's the last thing I want. Love asking my team, do you want that?
I love it. I can feel your Jim Collins stuff come through as far as fit to great and built to last and purpose and core values. It's clear it's in your strategies and you're doing so many things. And I love your approach. It's more zen than it is attacking, but rather allow the data and the information inform your approach. So you're doing, a variety of things, omnichannel and listening and being present, storytelling. What is like over the next 6-12 months? I know, you're reacting to certain things, but like, hey, there's a gap, like, and that we really need to solve for. What
Yeah.
what do you and your team do?
Absolutely great. I think first one is measurement. I mentioned brand momentum again, is really understanding, you can see your brick and mortar data, you can see your Amazon data, you can see D2C, you can see, but bringing it together in a view of, yeah, we're growing the pie. We're not just splitting the pie up differently. Most
Hmm.
brands that I've worked with, and I did a lot of consulting before and after NetRush and during what says, well, this channel's up, this channel's down. Well, how are you in total? Did you just move the sales? And especially in a world where someone could be buying it and redistributing it somewhere else, you really don't know where it goes. So the first one is better understanding. So we're looking at the same data. At the same time that we're doing that, we're trying to start telling our story at scale, because the only way you get to 100 videos a day is to get to one video a day, and then two, and then
Hmm.
four. And it's building that momentum, pushing that snowball. I talk with my head of marketing, Nicole, and she's awesome. We talk about it every day about, let's just push the snowball a little bit. Did we build momentum? And then I think the third part is really going to come into 3 and 4 will be equals. Figuring out what are the biggest levers for us to pull on so we can pull on them hard. It's not pulling a whole bunch of levers, but saying, wow, this is a place we're really effective. Let's really dive in here and then continue to evaluate to see how long this lever works. Because as much as we're talking about TikTok today, we'll be talking about something different next year. I remember saying e-commerce didn't work, and then I started working with Vitacost back when they were $200 million of e-commerce sales going, ooh, there's something here. There's something here. Hey, we were doing Google and spreadsheets, and we thought we were so smart. And now I look at the systems we have today and like, oh yeah, that's a little bit different. And then the third part is really connecting with our consumer. And again, not to direct them, so our D2C site was very promotion driven. And we're now making the switch to saying, when we're going to email our customers through our CRM, it's going to be information given, either information to use or information to share. Again, building a relationship with them. And I think all those pieces of building that relationship, building a movement around what we do, is that has to transition. And that's probably the next 6 months will be telling our story at scale and learning how to measure. Then we'll start making decisions about how we lever. And then we'll really start getting into, when I look at 2027, making sure we're building relationships with our consumers, not just transacting with them. So I have a common saying, trust over transactions. If we're building trust, we'll be okay. If it's transactional, it's going to go away to the next best transaction.
Dive in more to that building trust. I know you said sending emails. So instead of sending a transactional email, actually telling a story, which I love. Like I'm absolutely in love with that. I tell that to brands all the time. Don't just send another sale. Like, give me a reason to have a relationship with you. But what does that mean? Because I mean, okay, it's one thing email. That's one marketing channel, but like it's got to be more than that.
I think it's a lot of it's listening. So we're actively looking right now. I said about getting information. My head of marketing is working on, developing a new position that helps us do social listening better and engaging with people. We were sitting in the office one day and I pulled up TikTok, where I am not at all smooth. And I started searching and like, guys, here's all the people talking to us. How do we engage with them? They already love us. How do we engage with them? How do we tell their story? I mentioned the doctors, like, can we share your story? Can we amplify your practice? Is another case.
Hmm.
I've always believed, and again, coming from consumer goods, we all wanted D2C sites because we got more margins and better data. Well, margins you could question because you also have more expenses, but that's a very look
Hmm.
at me view of what I got for D2C. So what I finally started when I was in the agency side, when I was at NetRush, asking people, what does your consumer get out of it? I want them to feel like they're in a club. I hesitate to use the term family, but at least in a club, to saying, yeah, I'm a part of this. I'm really a fan. I'm going to learn more things, and I was at a brand called Megafood for years, and our CEO did a great job. We would open up our facility a couple days a year and have like a festival around it, and bring in our top retail customers, but also let consumers from the area come and have raffles for people to come visit it. And I think, what we do is kind of magical. It's really, really cool. We kind of invented this process, and letting people into that, sharing content with them maybe they won't see other places. We're in the process of developing, gold hydrosol. It's a really complicated process. Our timeline on it has been 14 years and counting. So I'm bringing a videographer on staff, and one of the reasons why I do is to be able to start telling people that story. This is what it takes to become a product. Again, I can
That's
make
great.
I can make it in my bathtub, but I can't make what we make in our bathtub. What's the difference? And I think engaging and getting people, again, said, I would love to celebrate other people's stories. It's really great to say it works, but when someone starts knowing that, oh my God, I used this and it was amazing, and actually having the interaction with them of, Yeah, you use it that way. Do you want to try it this way? And sending a sample, or can you tell that story? We'd love to have you share that story because it impacts other people. That's the part that gets exciting to me. It's not transactional. It's not simply let me give you an affiliate code and do a dance and talk about the product, which is great too. I mean, that's awesome. That's a certain part of what we do. But for those people that really want to engage, I said omni-channels, buying what I want, when I want, where I want. Engagement also has to be how people want to engage. There's channels I'm more comfortable engaging than others. We met over LinkedIn because that's a place I'm very, very comfortable. I post a lot less on Meta. It's just not as comfortable. Nothing wrong with it. I do it, but where I'm more comfortable is there. And I think being able to engage across those channels is
That's right. I think one of the things that I'm always encouraging brands, and this is you're going the same way. I think most brands are at 80% promotion, 20% store. And I think it needs to be flipped to build that relationship, to build that community. Because if you have a brand, for the most part, people will be excited about it. If they enjoy the product, they will have excitement. They'll want to talk about it. I talk about Outdoor Voices all the time. This was a store in Austin. It was young and hip, and they literally had a store half a mile from where I live, and we would go on runs. And there was real community. Like we would go do things with this community, and half our wardrobe was Outdoor Voices stuff. Then it got bought by P&E, and that community went away. It's gone, and they're trying to rebuild it.
yeah. And I think trying to build community online is different. That was the promise of social media, right? Was we're going to have community, and I'm not sure we really achieved that yet. But I think those moments of community, and I hesitate. I think it's Seth Godin always says, tribes, people like us act like this. I think there's a second sentence to that, which is, and it's cool if you don't too. Where it's not divisive. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. That'll probably be next week's LinkedIn post on preview. I think that concept of, beginning, we want to hang out with people who love those things. If you've been in, I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 20 years. I mean, that was my world. I wanted to be around those people. I went to, when I couldn't compete because I was injured, I still went to the competitions to see my people. When I travel places, I
Mhm.
still stop by and visit. Now that I'm not as active with it. And I think being able to engage that way is great. And I think going back to your 2080, right? What's it in service of? What are you solving for? Are you solving for a short-term pain point? Because in most cases, I mean, the math's pretty simple. If you drop prices 20% and you don't increase volume 20%, you lost sales.
Totally. Or even more than 20%. Like you got
Exactly.
to go.
Yeah. And we tend to think about that in terms of just in that moment, just for that flash sale. But then you have to look at sales. I remember brick and mortar years ago. I won't mention the chain, but they used to run a 1-day sale once a year. And it was incredible because for that 1 day, sales spiked. So what, of course, do you do? Then you run it twice a year. Then you run it 4 times a year. And by the time they were running it 4 times a year, they had trained the customers, and we could see in our sales data. Sales dipped before,
Mhm.
they spiked, and they dipped again. It went from being something I loved supporting to something I'm like, like, why don't you support it as much anymore? I was in their headquarters. I'm like, because we've trained people just to buy the product on this day for less. You
Yeah.
know, I would walk in there as an employee for a brand and visiting stores and passing out samples and talking to people, but I would do my shopping. I remember calling my friends at a protein company. I'm like, I just bought 6 months of protein for this many dollars. Like, what? You have coupons? You had it on discount? You had an extra discount? And they're like, you just bought it for wholesale. I'm like, I know. Yeah, I'm happy. It didn't grow the business. It didn't grow the impact that we have. And I think if you're going to talk the 80% promotional, that's exactly what you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with giving people value. But I think it's more important. We launch these brands. You work with brands that are trying to accomplish something. We need to accomplish more of it, not just accomplish it.
Now you hit it right on the head, Dan. I mean, price is what you pay, value is what you get. So if you imbue the brand and you're doing the storytelling very well, the elements in the customer, regardless of how they're interacting with you, where they're interacting with you, there are cues that they remember that's a greater value than just getting it 20% off. And hey, once in a while you've got to, get some inventory, add some old inventory, and that's fine. That's a strategic move. But I agree with you. Training customers to front load and from the sales dashboard that shows, hey, we had great sales, but what you basically did was compromise your future sales.
Yeah,
So
overlook.
well done.
Yeah, and there's other things
Yeah,
you can do. Like, it is great to celebrate them sometimes and say, "Look, we love you. We're going to give you a discount." But it's just as much to, heaven forbid, if you buy this, we're going to give you a free sample of something else that's complementary to it, or we're going to do this for you down the road, or there's other things you can do to reward or to engage besides simply discounting. Discount's just easy.
100%. It's lazy.
So, do you have any e-commerce or what is your e-commerce hot take?
I the question and I've mentioned already is I ask people invariably, and I try to talk to a lot of brands in my space and says, "What are you solving for? Is it demand or distribution?"
Mhm.
Because if you
Yeah.
don't know that, you don't have a lens to know if you're making a good decision or not. Should I do DSP on Amazon? What are you solving for? Should I increase my marketing spend? What are you trying to do? Do you have you filled out distribution? Should I be in this? Should I be diverting my sales? Like, I own in my category 70% of the market. I think I've done a pretty good job of capturing demand. Now I have a really good person internally. I've got a really good agency that she works with, and we pioneered the category. So yeah, my dollars are starting to transition to other places to generate demand. When I was on the agency side, when I talk with friends in the industry, that question does not get answered nearly enough. And I think if I'm in your shoes, Justin, if I'm in your shoes, Jonathan, and people don't know that, I don't know how they understand your advice.
Hmm.
Why is he
Yeah.
telling me to go off and spend more money? I'm already spending more money than I've ever spent because a lot of brands see e-commerce spend as trade spend, right? Trade spend is just what you get on shelves. They used to call it slotting fees back in the days of, Procter and Gamble and J&J being massive, and now they charge it in terms of this is the support you do on shelf. You hear about Walmart says you have to spend this much every year supporting your brand. That's trade spend. That's solving for distribution spend. That's not solving for demand spend. Demand spend is very different. It's measured differently. It occurs in different places. So my hot take is understand what you're solving for first. If you don't have distribution, you don't have to build demand necessarily. Go capture distribution. That's going to be a fun ride for a while. Once you get there, what got you there is not going to get you to what's next. And the people who are getting that are growing exponentially, even in a tough economy. The people who are struggling are going to continue to struggle.
Sage words. Sage words. Hey, you seem to have an excellent grasp on on all the different pieces, but I'm curious, is there a piece of what you do? And I know it's new in the role that you're in right now, but is there a piece of the business that you dread?
Dread? Yeah,
Yeah, it's sort
I hate the conversations about this is what we've always done, so how are we going to keep on doing it and get different results?
of the insanity.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. The business insanity question or the how are you going to protect this part of the business? No, how am I going to unleash this part of the business? The traditional I know if I'm generating demand, my core traditional business is going to grow. My core retailers that supported us early on are going to benefit from me increasing demand. Protecting them does not help them. It's like being a helicopter brand. I don't know, instead of a helicopter parent, I think to a degree of you're not letting them grow and expand. So those are the things that I dread. And I will admit, I think the thing I have to remind myself is of none of these things that I'm talking about am I an expert in anywhere close to it. It's been 10 years since I've touched an Amazon Seller Central console. When I was at NetRush, there was no way I was touching that thing and risking turning that off. Like, there were people who were really good at it. They weren't me. When I was working with Solozo and we were doing hundreds of millions of dollars of marketing attributed sales, I was not trying to build campaigns. We had brilliant people building those campaigns. Jolie was building architecture. Scott was building campaigns. Kyle was building these incredible campaigns. When I'm branching out now, I trust my TikTok team. Becca runs that for me, and she gets it, and she lives in that world, and she knows it. And I'm like, yeah, what do you need? What's in your way? How do we get it out of your way? On the content side, I asked Tom, what are you doing? And the branding side, I have, Nicole and Stephanie tell me that. Angel runs my Amazon business, and I've got a meeting with her right after this, and she's going to tell me what's in her way, but I'm not going to be crawling through Seller Central with her. Can I help her be better? Absolutely. And I think for all of us, we need to embrace hiring the expert, hiring the people like yourselves to say, look, we're solving for something, then listening when it doesn't jibe with what you've traditionally known. I'm 55 years old. My view of retail is very different than the generation coming up now. I'm
No,
talking to a lot
again,
of olds right now for a reason.
back to Jim Collins, servant leader.
Yep.
It feels like that, you know, again, just like any other business, if you if you try and do that, what your job was 20 years ago, and add all the other things, you'll burn out and there'll be nothing left. You have to migrate and move just like your business. So
And let the expert.
yeah,
I think the
it's
hard part
great.
is we often hire experts and then we tell them to do what we want. That's the other thing I hate. That one kills me. Okay,
That's the worst.
just hired you. You're
Yeah,
going to run my digital campaign. You're going to run my flows, but I want you to do it like this.
do it this way. Yeah.
They're like, first, see, how do you like this content? I don't know. How was engagement on it? I'm not the target market. I already believe in my product. I'm really not the target market. I think
Very healthy.
those keys become critically important. Can we get out there? And if you're going to hire a director of e-commerce as I'm an old school brick and mortar guy, I need to listen to my director of e-commerce. I need to listen to my outside agencies because they're living in a world that I don't know. And it doesn't mean you don't validate it, right? What was the old Reagan, trust and validate? And that's verified. That's great. But you've got to let the experts expert because you can't learn this stuff fast enough. And when you get below the line, that's what I'll do. I'm going to go learn TikTok. No, I need to call the person who knows TikTok. It's okay. And then hold on, because some of the things they're going to say are like, wait, you said what? No, okay. Explain that one a little bit better. Seeking to understand becomes critical because, like you said, your 20/80 to 80/20 really resonated with me, Justin, because I know how hard it is to have that conversation. And if people don't get that, it's going to be really hard to deliver results. And that sucks for both sides.
Man, it's good stuff.
Love it, love it. Yeah, and I think the demand generation versus demand capture is really interesting in our world of like on-site optimization because I think the old world of demand capture was like reduce friction because the demand's already there. You just got to reduce the friction. But we're
Yep.
out of that world.
Yes.
Like that, you don't. We're out of that world, and now you actually have to create an emotion in someone that someone can respond to. Create a community. Create a reason that someone wants to interact with you more than just they already have the demand. And that's where that on-site optimization really, that story has to be told.
Absolutely. And I love your posts on LinkedIn because you embrace the complexity of that, right? Demand capture was a pretty straightforward business. Like you said, remove friction. Now it's multi-layered, multi-conversations. How are you building community at scale? How are you telling story at scale? And then how are you navigating that a company may not be structured the way, to support that?
Yeah, and it's hard to like, especially. I mean, the world's changed in the past 6 months with AI. Like, how
Yeah.
could
Oh my
a
gosh. Yeah.
company be created to support that?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
unless you were made in the past 6 months, you can't. So you're having to retool and rebuild the plane as it flies.
Yeah. And that means changing skills, changing people in some cases, rethinking roles, and again, and trying to do it quickly. And yeah, like I said, I love your posts. That's what got me to engage with you more because it's the same thing. It is a complicated, not just doing the work, but also having the conversations. So when you do the dialogues with the CFO, I'm like, yep, that's real. I'm going to have one of those this afternoon. You want to do what? Yeah, I want to do that. Because in 6 months, you're going to say, you did that. But, for six
Well,
months,
I love your analogy about the snowball. Just keep the momentum.
yeah,
If you get overwhelmed by trying to do everything at once, well, then you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. So just get people moving in the right direction, read data, keep on tweaking, but insert vision and insert guidelines and the questioning that you're doing is really, I mean, you guys are going through a big, significant change at the organization, and you brought you in for the first, outside CEO. And, just a lot of things are changing. Is it happening at the pace you want, or do you feel like it's not fast enough? Where are you at?
yes. And so it's happening at the correct pace, I think, which is the building momentum every day. It's not happening at the pace that I want, which is my problem, not everyone else's. Right. Again, coming from digital,
Patience.
I kind of have an idea where it's going, and I'm like, why aren't we there yet? It's like the kid in the backseat of the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? But I think that concept of, going into Silicon Valley, minimum viable product, I keep on thinking about like minimum viable momentum. Like, can we just be a little bit better today? And that also gets people comfortable with it. So, when I came on board, we were just getting ready to launch organic social after having shut it off for a period of time for really good reasons. And we got to the point like, okay, guys, let's just get a post live. We didn't like that one. That's okay. We'll get another one. We'll get another one. We'll get another one. Now I talk to my marketing team. It's like, how do we double our output? Don't solve for 10x. Just how do we double, which is a pretty low number right now. And it's, oh, we can do that. Great. When we've done that, guess what the question is going to be? how can we double it again? Start increasing our engagement. But if you don't take the first step, you don't get anywhere. And I think, Jonathan, you brought up the momentum again. I always challenge my team to try and be lazy. And this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I did jujitsu for 20 years and I started when I was 36. I stopped during COVID because of injuries that predated my jujitsu. But before I stopped, I would go on Saturdays as one of the black belts in the gym, and whoever wanted to train with me, I would train with. And if I had to be there for 2.5 hours, they would get around. And everyone's like, "How can you do that? You're not young." I'm like, "Well, I was doing only the things I thought were going to work really well." There's an advantage being a black belt, right? There's an advantage being an expert like you guys are of saying, "Look, this is it." And so I'm constantly trying to challenge my team of let's find what gets us to the next hump and keep on building, as opposed to trying to build. You know, I know what my largest competitors are doing on TikTok right now, and I can't get there tomorrow. But I can
Good
look
for you.
backwards and be better tomorrow than I was today. I can be better today. I can do more online. So I talk to my head of marketing every morning. We go and we check how many people viewed us, how many people bought. Was it was the number bigger today than it was yesterday? Yep, that's a win. Let's go. And I think remembering that sometimes, because we all want to go to best in class. We all want to go to, oh, I want to get exactly this ROAS, this ACOS, this TACOS, this conversion rate, the CT. We want to get to these magical numbers. Well, the only way you get them is one step at a time.
Yeah.
You
Slowly,
That's
iteratively
right.
getting.
The old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
exactly right.
Yeah, it's amazing. It reminds me of a great film, Hero Dreams of Sushi. I don't know if you've seen this film. Yeah, it's fabulous. And it actually is very relevant to your organization, given the idea if he does his work, what he's supposed to do each day, and everybody improves just a little bit, no competition can ever catch him. Yeah, I love your philosophy, and I love the melding or the blending of great marketer intelligence. You mentioned a few of them, as well as your discipline in your field, and your natural jujitsu, which gives you mental acuity and sharpness in being thoughtful, but also intentional. And momentum is a wonderful, wonderful phrase. Love it.
I need to wrap up. What are you reading personally, professionally? What are you listening to? What's interesting you?
So much. So I'm an Audible junkie. This week I re-listened to the big three Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy books. So Gap to Gain, Who Not How, which I'm obsessing over. Back to my Let the Experts Expert, just because I've
Uh-huh.
read them before, but a great reminder. X is easier than 2X, which is a popular book around our office, but it still comes down to doing the basics well. On a fiction side, I love Dan Silva, and I reread like all of his books almost every year. I'm in the middle of that run. He's amazing. So my wife's Italian. She's amazing. So he does so much in Italy. It's great because now I can talk more intelligently about where she came from. And on the podcast side, I've been a little bit light because I've been listening to books like crazy, but those are the big ones.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dan. These were amazing insights. Really
Thank you guys
appreciate
so
it.
much for
Thank you.
having me, and keep up the great content. I love what you guys put out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank, thank you much.